Welcome, friends. My name's Ted Bongiovanni. I'm a member of Brooklyn Meeting, and I'm also the executive director for the New York Quarterly Meeting. And it is with great joy that we're here tonight to celebrate and learn from this epic walk to Washington. We're here with Jess, Ross, Max, and Lena, our organizers. Let's give them a big hand. For modeling, for challenging, for inspiring, for giving us hope and creating opportunities to be hopeful for so many people along that 300-mile route. So we've got a film, we're gonna talk about it, and I hope that we're gonna be challenged by what we hear tonight. And with that, I'm gonna turn it over to our organizers. Thank you guys so much for being here and for talking to us, and I can't wait to learn all about it from you.
Thanks, Ted. Let's start with the film, and then thanks, y'all. And just like a quick word about the idea of summarizing something that took 19 days to do into like a 3.5-minute little clip. Something about it feels a little reductive, honestly. It was like a distillation of what we did. The full breadth and scope of emotions and experiences that we had can't really be summarized in any shorter period of time than 19 days. But this is an entry into like a larger landscape of media. Like we get all of our information through video nowadays, and part of what we were doing and walking to DC was to register not just to complain in opposition to what we saw and what we recognize as injustice, but it was an opportunity to reestablish Quakers as having always been part of a national conversation in one way or another, and often always in the most important parts of American history. And here, nowadays, the way that we communicate our ideas and thoughts and stories are through film and movies. And so we've got a lot to talk about tonight. And a little bit of it is going to be about the ways that we intend to maybe document the current state of Quaker life and the kind of like living memory that we have of what has been a history of activism, and amongst other things. But what are we talking about next?
I think we can kick to Jess, whatever. We just want to make sure everyone has background on like the scope, scale, and nature of the walk. And we'll have a chance for some Q&A, but to get out ahead of it, what do we want to share?
Is this, okay, yeah. Just for the video obviously had some of the details, but just for those who weren't familiar with the walk, we did cover 295 miles between Flushing and DC, 300 miles, 295 by foot, 5 miles by canoe crossing. In the course of those 300 miles, we connected with 26 Quaker congregations. These congregations supported us through housing, through food, through rest stations, through laundry trips, through showers. All of the things that we needed to be able to do this walk were primarily provided through Quaker communities. In the course of that, we think that we've roped in somewhere in the ballpark of 1,000 people to support us through cooking something, through donations, through any of the things that I've listed earlier, just showing up at a potluck. And that was something that was really, really spectacular. Something that I feel like we kept kind of saying along the walk was that if we are able to walk from one meeting house to another meeting house, there's no reason why these congregations can't coalesce together. We are way closer to one another than we often think we are, and in a time where so much is really divisive and scary and polarizing, I think this was a really beautiful way to connect in a very personal way, and really we could not have done this without that support. I also, we saw a couple of faces that are in this room in that video. So I also, it was great to have a quick thank you from Ted, but I also just want to thank those who walked or supported in other ways, because, these 300 miles were something that were achieved together as a Quaker community and not by any individual group or person. It was really a incredible display of what we can do when we come together, and a reminder of that.
Yeah, we should give a shout out to the room because we're sat in front like we did this alone, which is totally the opposite of the truth. All of those 1,000 people made this possible. And there are people in this room right now who walked or helped us plan before we left. So I just would invite those people to stand up and get some thank yous. Let's get some claps going for them. Yeah, I know there are more of you. There we go. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so lots of people contributed different ways. Yeah. I kept seeing this. That's, I think a lot of what this action was about is our place in the national conversation, and that sign just felt really interesting to me, and I needed to put it in the slideshow. But I want to give a special thank you to Elena Callahan for all her help with organizing and PR. We were all PR babies, taking on a lot of things that we only sort of knew how to do, and her bringing some actual experience and a lot of work to it was very helpful. Also, couldn't be here tonight, but Stuart Steidenstreicher and Deanna Mejia, our good friend Stuart is in the bucket hat that you see with sort of the floppy edges. They are friends from the Plainfield meeting, which is within our yearly, outside our quarter, but they really are our neighbors. And they dedicated an enormous amount of time, effort, money, expertise to this. Deanna drove the whole way with an additional support vehicle. Stuart walked essentially the whole way. They were our mentors for planning the actions we did in each city. And they are both full-time workers in the world. So all of us were able to do this because we were in varying states of unemployment and underemployment. And Stuart and Deanna took vacation so that they could, for 2.5 weeks, just focus on this action.
A full year's PTO, so their entire stock of PTO this whole year.
Yep. And they're out in New Jersey and Plainfield and Madison and some other towns, run an organization called Wind of the Spirit that is doing a lot of direct work supporting undocumented immigrants and other communities who are being affected by the current reign of terror. So their participation really deepened this for all of us, being able to interface with their community directly when we were staying in Plainfield. And I think really they're like a model for what we could be doing as faith communities. Lena, do you want to speak to the lobbying visits? Should I talk about the Remonstrance first? Okay, I'm going to briefly say, who here, show of hands, has heard the Flushing Remonstrance or knows what it is? Okay, so that's most of us now. But I'll briefly recap the story, which is in the 1650s, Quakers were considered illegal immigrants to the colony of New Netherland because we were heretics in the eyes of Governor Peter Stuyvesant. And some Dutch Reform farmers in the town of Flushing, who were in the in-group and had a lot to lose, stuck their neck out and wrote a letter of remonstrance, of dissent to Peter Stuyvesant, affirming the existing value of religious liberty in the New World, and really outlining why it was their Christian duty to protect Quakers that came to them seeking refuge. And that, hearing about that document, reading that document, was what inspired this walk as as an outgrowth of the Peace and Social Action Committee and concerns that friends brought there. This really coalesced around that message. And as we traveled down the coast, staying with different Quaker meetings and a couple other religious congregations, talking to people who asked us questions on the roadside along the way, we tried to take those messages, record them, and season on them into a statement of our own that would represent us, represent the folks who could not be part of this march for fear of deportation themselves, who we met a lot of in New Jersey and shared really moving messages. And we tried to take those and the general input of the Friends community and season together a message that could stand as a modern remonstrance akin to the 1657 one, because we felt a responsibility to speak out for people who are already running from the government, already persecuted and marginalized in the most literal and extreme of ways, in the way that other people did that for our community at its nascence in the 1600s. So we have that remonstrance. We'll read it in a second, but that was part of what we brought to Washington, D.C., part of what we brought to our meetings with congressional offices. But there's a lot more thought that went into that. Yeah.
Lobbying. So when we got to DC, we did do some lobbying of our congresspeople and our senators. We talked to, just from New York, Congressman Goldman, and then we also talked to Gillibrand and Schumer. And I think we did more drop-in visits than that, but we talked to a lot of our representatives from where we grew up, from New York, and then also people who were with us got trained in lobbying by FCNL, Friends Committee on National Legislation, and AFSC, the American Friends Service Committee, both committees, neither councils. We learned that. And I think like a big part of this was a community building effort. Like I really believe in people power over power of our elected officials, but we were trying to push on all the levers we could. And this was like trying to start a conversation, trying to activate fellow Quakers, but we were like, well, we should use this PR stunt to also try and pressure our elected officials who were passing a really horrible national budget at the time, and tried to lobby them to not increase funding for ICE, and also just to like center immigrants and a lot of these human rights violations in the work that they're doing. So a lot of us got to try lobbying for the first time. Not that I think that is the only way. Oh, y'all are seeing Bread the dog and Goldie the van. Yeah, those are two central characters. But yeah, I think it was interesting to think about all the ways that people can and need to be making change. We met a cool organization, a group of folks in Maryland and Pennsylvania called Quaker Voice that does state level lobbying, like for driver's licenses for undocumented folks. They did a lot of lobbying at the state level that has like real meaningful impacts. So yeah, just learning about a diversity of things to be doing. And that was how our walk culminated. Yeah.
So I think one of the tensions that came up as we were planning this is how do we, as Quakers, what is our role in the current national conversation? There's, I think, a valid concern that we are not generally the people being affected by government persecution most acutely, and that we need to be platforming other voices. I think that's real. I think we also learned over the course of this action that people's voices who are being suppressed, we can't just offer them a microphone and be like, here's your platform, because they're in active fear of retribution from our government. We also thought a lot about why this resonated so much for us, what the connection of Quakerism is to American national politics, and what the perception of Quakerism is, the ways that we are received and understood by the general population, and what that means for our power and responsibilities. we're very connected to the myth, the origin myth of the United States. Right? We're, like the Pilgrims, one of those originating religious groups that came seeking religious liberty. We get taught in the history curriculum around the Revolutionary War. We get taught in the history curriculum around abolition and the Underground Railroad. These hats are like recognizable from the Quaker Oats box, which, as silly as that seems, is one of the visual touch points that people in the broader culture have about us. And that Quaker Oats brand came about because we were already seen as trustworthy, as straightforward, as speaking truth in a direct and unelaborated way. And that cachet that we have in the cultures is still with us. It's still real, and it's incredibly important in this moment where authoritarian voices are trying to reshape how we imagine American history, how we imagine American identity, and do that in a way that excludes more and more people. We are as close to the middle of this heritage American idea that the right is trying to kick around as we could possibly be. We're a diverse community, but we're still majority white, we're still majority wealthy, we're still majority many generations in America, and we're connected to this history in a really visible and obvious way. And so we have the safety that the Dutch Reformed farmers of Flushing had relative their government. We have that safety relative our government, and we have that because of our cultural cachet. So we really feel that there's a responsibility for us to use that voice in internal active conversation with those who suffer, not in a way that is disconnected from the reality and from the suffering of our brothers and sisters around us, but in a way that takes on our own identity, steps into the national spotlight, and uses that cultural power that we have to the effect of justice. And that was our hope in distilling this document that we presented to members of Congress, which we're calling the 2025 Flushing Remonstrance, or the Walker's Remonstrance. And I'm just going to go ahead and read that, but let's have a moment of silence first to transition in. And I'm going to put on the hat for the full effect. Remonstrance of the Quaker Walkers of New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Maryland to the United States government, delivered May 22nd, 2025. To our representatives, through your action or inaction, you have permitted the intrusion of federal officers into our houses of worship to abduct our friends and neighbors. We cannot accept this transgression of the sacred, both the sacred stillness of our worship and the divine human rights of our persecuted friends. While the voice of power slanders them, calling non-citizens criminals, stirring fears of displacement and hatred of the newcomer, we know the truth, that we are all children of God, deserving of equal opportunity and safe harbor. We know that our rights are endowed freely by heaven and not conferred by the paperwork of citizenship. Being ourselves immigrants or their descendants, delivered to this land by a violent history, we cannot judge anyone else seeking freedom and shelter here today. We are bound instead by a sacred obligation to do good to one another in all circumstances. While the politics of the moment may be set against such hospitality, when forced to choose between the laws of man and the law of God, between the politics of the moment and the politics of eternity, we will always choose to follow the light. As to those who say undocumented immigrants are destructive to our nation and its values, they themselves misunderstand our nation and its values. American nationhood is not an ethnicity, nor a mundane coincidence of culture. It is a set of sacred principles, including equality before the law, due process, and free expression. We are an exceptional nation because we are forged from the lineages of the world, yet unified in the centuries-long pursuit of a free and just society. Our founding experiment is a state intended to provide liberty to all, protecting the inalienable rights of all people within its territories and subject to its power. Every human being that our government detains has a right to due process and a jury of their peers. No matter how often it is ignored, this is the highest civil law of our land, enshrined in the Bill of Rights. If this administration can defile that law by making ICE the judge, jury, and executioner for any class of people, we are in deep peril of losing our democratic republic. Civic history teaches that assaults on the rights of any group imperil the rights of the entire nation. As all people are created equal by God, which we hold to be self-evident, we condemn the cruel and arbitrary subjugation of any person. Our faith teaches us compassion for all forms of humanity, with no exceptions for human beings under the judgment of the law. The golden rule which guides us flows from the witness of that of God and all people. This is the underlying law of all religions and the core of true morality. Therefore, whoever may come to us in fear and in need, we are compelled by conscience to aid them, giving them free access to our homes and churches. This is according to our traditions, both civic and religious, as Americans and Quakers. We have a responsibility we refuse to neglect, to steward the utopian projects of our ancestors for this nation and for the kingdom of God. In the protection of faith in God and our Constitution, we will hold to our moral convictions as ministers, citizens, and patriots. So long as you represent us, we demand that you do the same. Your faithful constituents, American friends among the New York, Philadelphia, and Baltimore yearly meetings.
So we have a mic set up, and we don't plan on talking the whole time, at least not unprompted by our friends here. So if there's anyone who has any questions at this point, there's plenty of knowledge that we'd like to share, and we've got some things we're going to go through towards the end of it too. But we thought we might take this middle section to open it up for questions from the crowd.
I can come around if you raise your hand.
I'll just kick things off. What was the strangest place you slept?
I've tested a lot of pew cushions, and they vary greatly in their comfort.
I think it depends on your definition of strange, but I do know that at London Grove, which was the meeting house with the horse, right? Mm-hmm. London Grove had a horse. I like to look around places that I'm in. Call me nosy, but I took some time before finding the place that I actually wanted to sleep to explore the attic, and opened the door to the attic and immediately felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. And so I said, that's not where I'm sleeping. But that was that was a very strange experience for me, yeah.
Lena, can I out you as sleeping under tables? I feel like that. I slept under a table one night, and that was a little strange, but nice. Yeah, Jess, you have one?
Not strange, but Southampton has a beautiful meeting house, and instead of a facing bench, they face a gorgeous window that looks out over the trees. And it also doesn't have any curtains, so you wake up with the sun. And so I watched a lovely sunrise in Southampton and was startled by a bird flying right into the window, like as I was having this lovely peaceful morning watching the sunrise. So it wasn't a strange place to sleep, but was just like a very startling way to wake up. But also, while I have the mic, we also would love for folks who are walking or who have participated, if they also would like to share any experiences in addition to questions. We'd love to hear that as well. But yeah.
Hugo Lane, Flushing.
you spoke about the long history of Quakers in the in the United States and their role politically. I was just curious, is that something you really feel that there still is a residual recognition, or did you not get people thinking we didn't exist anymore? Obviously, you're not going to find that in a Quaker meeting. I know that. But did you not get a little sense? I mean, I don't disagree. I think we do need more of greater visibility. It doesn't have to be necessarily in the most political way, but the visibility of Quakers is very important to me. I'm just thinking, did you also experience a sense that we could be more visible than we are? Perhaps that's a way to phrase that.
Yeah, I think my take on that is that there were certainly folks who were surprised that Quakers still exist, like, thought of us as a history book thing. But there was more recognition than I expected. There was sort of an immediate difference in how quickly people got the action before we had Yana land down in her blue Quaker peace flag with us, and after. So there's a significant group of people who know who we are and responded entirely differently to the visage of us coming down the street with those yellow flags when there was the word Quaker on it. And for folks who were surprised that we still existed, their associations were still positive, and they saw us as American pioneers and historically social justice activists and trustworthy folks.
So I noticed that the Quaker brand does carry that same air of trustworthiness that we all know from the usage on the oats container. But folks really responded immediately well to us. We got a lot of different types of interactions as we were walking to DC, and a lot of them depended on where we were in the country, who we were passing by, what or whether or not they were in a vehicle as they were passing us by, but also whether or not we were carrying anything that said Quaker on it at the front of the line. And for the most part, people who noticed the word Quaker were really ready to support what we were doing. Because I do think that I am led to believe now that more folks know about the work that Quakerism has participated in than maybe 10 years ago or 20 or 30 years ago. I don't really know for sure, but I've heard anecdotally from a couple different places, including friend Edwin Remsburg is the clerk of Little Falls meeting, that this body of people as a broader congregation has tended to swell, wax and wane, depending on the visibility of crisis in the United States from generation to generation or decade to decade, which is not to say that America itself isn't just a large, 400-year-old crisis, but at times it's more visible than others. And during those times, activism swells, and Quakerism as a religion of protest and activism swells alongside it. And it feels to me like there are more people in my generation and before that know about Quakerism through the access point of activism. I've been going to protests since 2002, 2001, and I initially went with Sandy Spring Friends Meeting, which was my home meeting, and I continued to do activism through Young Friends with Baltimore Yearly Meeting, and then matriculated into the punk scene in DC, where I still found Quakers because there's that nexus, that Venn diagram of activism there, and it doesn't die back. I haven't decided to step away from Quakerism my entire life because it's fully in line with the thing that I feel is the best use of my energy, and I think that's the case for a lot of people in my generation and below. I believe that there is, and it's through things. I would like to think it's also through things that we do, such as the walk, that Quakerism is still continuing to wax during this time of crisis. So Hope that answers your question.
So since you connected with so many friends across the course of your walk, to use the term from Brooklyn, meaning how are you or planning on cooperating with these groups on peace and social action, activism type projects?
Great question. We've been trying to figure out what comes next for a bit now, but we are have decided that in the spirit of Quakerism, it's not up to us as organizers to decide what comes next, but rather we are looking to hold threshing sessions with the communities that we've connected with to help collectively discern how we all as a community would like to move forward to meet this current moment. So soft launch of our threshing sessions. We'd like to start with a New York session sometime late July and move down the coast following the path of our walk to collectively discern on how to meet this moment together.
We
Hi, I
have
have a question.
oh, sorry.
Sorry, I have a question. So DK Holland. I'm just wondering if this sounds like it should be a nice article, but well distributed. And I just wondered if you are A, thinking of that, and B, if you need help with that, and also if you would tell the whole story of John Bown and how he was taken to Holland, and how the Dutch changed their minds about religious freedom and brought the word back to Peter Stuyvesant to let all people worship, even though Amsterdam was, or the Netherlands was, Dutch reform, and in fact, other religions were illegal.
Thank you, DK. I'm going to try to answer your question briefly and then jump back to the threshing sessions. We got a lot of press coverage. We were very fortunate. And so the fact that this happened has been pretty well documented and distributed. We've done our best to try to tell our story from our perspective and elaborate on why we did what we did. The media coverage is always gonna not turn out exactly how you want. We have a lot of that story up on the website. We're working on writing more full op-eds and more full written accounts of why we did what we did. And in that, I totally don't have the full history that you referenced there, DK, and I would love to hear it from you and hear your sources about how that resolved itself. We sort of tell the story through the Dutch Remonstrance,
Yeah.
and how it like mirrors the current moment. But certainly for us figuring out what we do next, the story of how the religious liberty question actually resolved in New Netherlands is pretty relevant. So please connect with me after. And
Yeah, I'm happy to help, and I want to give a shout out to whoever did the design. As a designer, my heart has been so filled with joy seeing everything that's so beautifully designed. So, Quaker applause for that.
any more questions? How about the crossing? The crossing. We got, how about the crossing? Yeah, the crossing of the Susquehanna. So we crossed the Delaware, which is maybe the more famous river, just on a footbridge out of Trenton. The route that folks walk, so I guess we get to talk about walkability now, which is exciting. Right, the country has been built for cars since roughly 1950, and one of the ways that has happened is that there are no foot crossings of the Susquehanna River from the Chesapeake Bay to York, Pennsylvania. So like, I think 100+ mile stretch there. There are many bridges, they are all rail bridges or highway bridges. And so what we could have done was walk in a pretty straight line and get a car shuttle from one side of the river to the other, or walk in a really long line, the long way around in this big like semicircular arc through York, Pennsylvania, or third option, cross in a boat. That seemed like more fun. And part of why this action appealed so much to me, and I think probably also to Ross, is that we came up through the Baltimore Yearly Meeting camping program. I was a counselor there for 4 years, and so I went, I know people who have boats and people who have like human-powered boats so that we can claim these 5 miles and get to 300. And so I called up Dirisha Harris, who's the director of Catoctin Quaker Camp, and we figured out a little bit of insurance stuff and got 2 volunteers who are working as summer camp counselors now as we speak, since this was right before their season, to drive that canoe trailer from Thurmont, Maryland to Peach Bottom, Pennsylvania, so that we could cross. And the crossing was wild. You saw the pictures of the fog. It was really thick fog. I was like looking down at my phone and trying to paddle and paddling us in zigzags to get across. And then it cleared up, and then there was a thunderstorm. It was like all the drama we could have asked for all at once. And a really lovely thing to get to do. It was fun. It was different. And several people brought up to me in the sort of study the opposition sense, you know, the Trump people have these like boat parades. And this was our like crunchy granola hippie Quaker answer to the boat parades. I want to fly a flag from a boat, but I want it to be not a gas-powered boat, and I want it to be a flag of like human rights and truth. So that was a little bit of an extra gambit that we did, but it was so heartwarming to me and felt like a culmination to all the time I spent in the BOAM camping program.
Yeah, and in a lot of ways, like every other day of the walk and every other event of the walk, it just fit so nicely into a thing that we hadn't even realized we had planned. On account of the fact that it was, yes, like as you saw, almost invisibly foggy around us. And we woke up that morning and we, like every day, just started walking down to our next destination, which was the river. But it was a windy, like 3 mile walk, and it was mostly silent, like silent all around us, and that was enough of a backdrop for us to just have our like flags flapping in the wind, like echoing across the rocky cliff faces as we were getting down there, and then we get into the water, and it suddenly is sort of a realized metaphor for the thing that we were doing, which was, we said at the outset, heading towards something that we couldn't see and we couldn't discern, but we knew it was ahead of us. And if there was a better example of that, a better realized metaphor of that on the walk, I don't know what it was, because that couldn't have been a clearer example of the actual, just a little model of the broader thing that we were doing with the walk, and the walk itself being a model of the broader thing that we're trying to do with our activism, which is head towards something in faith that it will be there when we arrive.
Yeah. The phrase that Sandy Spring loved to bring up is proceed as your way opens, which I think is taken from a Fox quote. Matthew, you had a question?
Sorry I'm late, everybody. I was down at Federal Plaza because things are a little crazy today. My name is Matthew. I'm not yet a Quaker. I'm just a guest in your meeting house. I'm so grateful to be here, and I was able to be a guest on the walk for a few days with these folks, and I just celebrate you. I celebrate all that you've accomplished. I wonder if anyone has asked you all like the hard question yet? I'm sorry I'm late, but for me, this is the most important thing, is that I saw you guys leave New York and y'all were looking strong. And then I hopped the bus to Philly and you were changed. You were changed. And when I was checking in with my friend Max about it, he was telling me about the rigors of your task. Psychological and physical, emotional rigors. And we are in a Quaker meeting house, so I just wanted to kind of invite a question to you all about particularly doing this work in the movement. I'm an activist. How were you able to work with doubt, with fear, with uncertainty on your journey? What is it like when you really, as you say, going towards something you don't know? Maybe you could kind of, I'm not asking you to relive the rigors of your experience, but instead maybe share with us a nugget of wisdom about it, about what came through on the other side, because I think what you were able to do was an incredible feat, and I'm glad that you all made it. I think that there was some moments of real fear. Like, there was a point there in Philly where like Max was like, yo, this shit just got real, man. And like, he was getting nervous. And so, and also I just want to kind of invite one of the other organizers to maybe speak to that question, someone who hasn't spoken yet. Check.
I had the joy of walking this walk with some humans who were like born and raised Quakers, and I did not grow up religious. This is answering the question, I promise. But I think I felt like a little out of sorts in like a faith space. Like I think I felt like more comfortable maybe in like activism spaces than like faith spaces. But someone like right before I went on the walk was like, oh, if you have a belief that like your actions matter or that like your community, like problems will arise and your people can solve them, like you are a person of faith. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm such a person of faith. So I think for me, I was having like actually a really calm experience, like being with such a connected group of like, oh, like things will come up and we'll figure them out. Like I was stressed, but I was like having a pretty profound experience of like, oh my gosh, all of these random people showed up because they looked at the little red line on our website and realized our house was close to them and they brought us snacks. Like I was having a pretty profound experience of like, oh, like people, I love Yana's heart back here. This was my experience. Yeah, just like everywhere I looked, I was like, oh, people care so much and like people don't know how to like channel that energy, but they do like care so much. And like, so I think I felt like very filled with hope and the belief in like people and like, you know, we'll figure out how to get there. And I mean that in like the zoomed in, like how are we gonna get our permits sorted out for New York, like tangible, and also like how are we gonna get there, like larger, like taking care of each other, like movement wise. So I think I had like a pretty strong faith experience for myself as a like baby Quaker. But yeah.
Yeah, I think the question of doubt and yeah, I think it was something that came up a lot, and the question of fear and all of these scary things came up often. But I really came to the walk from a place of doubt and unknown, and it was something that at a time when I was personally had a lot taken away by the Trump administration, was looking for something to do with my energy and newfound time, and was feeling really feeling like a lot of things were really out of my control and out of my hands. And I think the idea of walking and just putting one foot in front of the other every day felt very tangible to me. I had the pleasure of talking to Charlene at dinner, and we were talking about how some of the logistics were coming together within days of when they needed to come together, within hours sometimes. And there were a lot of late nights where we would, you know, get to a destination, have dinner, and then spend some laptop time typing away, trying to figure out logistics for the next couple of days. Many late nights. And I think I'm someone who has a really hard time not staying zoomed out, not taking like I have a hard time digesting the big picture and trying to identify what the smaller steps were. But I think the act of walking and slowing down in that way and just truly having to only put one foot in front of the other made this really tangible and, you know, felt like a really easy way to, you know, I knew I could do that. And that helped to sway the doubt, especially paired with the immense amount of support we got. And, it was, once we had all of the meeting houses mapped out between here and DC, in my head I was like, there are plenty of kind Quakers along the way. When in doubt, they've showed an abundance of support, and I have, no fear that they won't continue to between here and DC, and that was true. We had so much support and so much community and so many people who wanted to help in a way that I think really helps quell the fears and doubts when we remember how many people we have wanting to work towards something together with us.
Yeah, and I think we all feel that a big part of this night is an opportunity to express gratitude to the Quaker community in New York and up and down the East Coast, whoever might be zooming in and whoever might be listening some other way. It is not something that would have been possible if we were just doing it out of our bedrooms and outside of a faith community and outside of a community which had the ability to support us in certain ways which were really vital. Like we had the witness fund from the yearly meeting was something that made all of this actually start, like the wheels actually start turning on it, that we've felt that there was a recognition in the broader community that this was important work, and that act of faith in our really unproven leadership just through the vision that we showed was something that helped us to expand into the vision that we were extending forward, which was huge. And then lots of folks that we had never even met, outside of the Quaker community, helped us through various forms of PayPal and different types of donations, which is incredibly important. Incredibly important to know that there is just various forms of faith that have come in to make this happen. And we did, on that note, we did a decent amount of work to make this a fairly somewhat ecumenical operation. We did work outside of the Quaker community a little bit, as much as we could, but this was something that we understood from the get-go was going to activate, this action was going to activate Quakers all up and down the East Coast. And without that legacy, that built-in infrastructure of faith and activism and care, we would have just been walking for no reason, and we wouldn't have made it out of New York. So.
Yeah, we're coming up on time, so I have a few comments maybe before we wrap. Maybe we'll have time for one question after. First is just, I want to reiterate how much support we got for this and how transformative that was. We were doing the math today to try to estimate what we were able to raise in-kind donations. The Witness Fund gave us $5,000 to work with, and our direct expenses came in below that. Our total expenses, were we not given food, shelter, loans of vehicles, and gas money from people who drove, would have been $22,000, roughly. So we were able to mobilize $22,000 of direct Quaker support by asking people within community for really immediate, concrete things in order to make this big statement. And we're able to do that pretty cheaply from the perspective of Brooklyn Monthly Meeting, or in this case, the Quarterly Witness Fund. That was also possible because the Doge Bros had very conveniently made sure that none of us had a full-time job during the course of this walk. This came together because of the Peace and Social Action Committee, but also because of the Tuesday, Thursday co-working that happens in this building. Us just being here together, looking for jobs, talking about activism, the things that stressed us out, the things that we were passionate about. And the way opened and the stars aligned for us to be able to dedicate a truly unhinged amount of time to this for about 3 months. It's been an honor and a privilege and so much fun, so much more fun than having a real job. But we do want to shout out just that this is within our capacity as a Quaker community, but the pathway that we got here was very of the moment. I don't think it's going to happen naturally again. And so if we want things like this to continue happening, we need to think consciously about what structures we create so that that can happen, so that passionate people from different generations are in the same place at the same time, so that we can mobilize enough talent and time to build a superstructure that other people can plug into and hang off of. Right, our friend Matthew, who came and joined us, people pay him to organize so that volunteers can attach to the organizing. And that can feel subversive, but it like makes things possible at Extinction Rebellion and Green Faith. So I think it's a conversation we probably want to have within Quakerism and within the New York Quarter, is how do we make sure this doesn't go away when we find other ways to feed ourselves? Who is gonna build that superstructure so that we can plug in where we can and mobilize a lot of Quaker witness energy in the context that we live in, of all needing to take care of ourselves and take care of our families and having other obligations that pull us away from putting our heads down and doing one form of witness work with all our energy. In the spirit of figuring out what we're going to do as a community, we have a tentative date, very tentative date for our quarterly threshing session. And the topic of this, right, would be how do we engage more substantively and consistently in activism, protecting democracy and the people under threat from the administration. And we would want to do that on the 19th of July, which is a Saturday. We'll make that more concrete. We'll get more dates out. But what it would look like if we can do it on that day or another is having a more Quaker process threshing session paired with some breakouts about existing projects from people in the community and connected to the community. And we would do that after a worship and a meal at 15th Street and have some time in the morning for folks to walk to 15th Street in the spirit of walk, pilgrimage, and witness. And we would organize that from somewhere from here and from somewhere uptown that is a similar distance away so that the Morningside and Flushing folks don't walk their feet off. Question from Hugo. That's why it's so open on the calendar, because we should already know.
I think we will be happy to see it happen in the cemetery, but just...
Thank you for that, putting that on our radar. No, we're looking off different calendars and maybe missed the big one.
So stay tuned for a date.
Stay tuned for date.
But that will be the plan for the said date. We will get you date as soon as we can.
I think if anyone has a burning question, we can do one more, but then we're getting up on time and should have a little silence outro.
Oh, yeah, let's do the same question. Michael, it looks like you have a question on Zoom.
Yes, thank you. Hi. I have two connections that I want to lift up. My wife, Allison Levy, participated in part of the walk. She was with you from Flushing to Staten Island. I think she's on Zoom. I serve as clerk of the Quaker Call Steering Committee that's been organizing Friends as a place for worship and witness and holding the concerns, all of the which you folks are addressing. I put a message in the chat because I would love to have a copy of the recording from tonight to be able to share with the steering committee. And there probably are some ways we should be collaborating. We now have 3,000 friends across the United States connected to the work we've been doing, which has mostly been online, holding space, helping friends know the resources that are out there to enable their own witness work. Out of a prayerful, nonviolent space, holding the Quaker banner, all the things that you've done so inspiringly. And I want to give out 3 shouts for that and would love to share it more thoroughly. We did show a little video to the steering committee after Allison got back from her little part of the walk, and people recognize what you've done. But tonight was a much fuller story, and I think extraordinarily inspiring, not just for friends, but for for what we represent and the responsibility. I love the fact that the friend who spoke about this talked about both the kind of history that we carry, but the responsibility that we carry because of it. So I just want to thank you. I want to know if I can have a link to the Zoom recording, and I want to find a way to collaborate some with the urgent call, the Quaker call that's now 3,000 people strong across the whole United States. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michael. There will be a recording of this. It will be up on our brand new YouTube channel, which I just started this afternoon, along with the video that we showed at the start of the hour, along with probably a lot of other video content to come. There will be an element of this, which is a continuing communication campaign, and that's gonna. I'm addressing you, like you can look right at me. Yeah.
Thank you.
Elena,
And will we be able to share a link to that then to the website?
Yeah, well, I'll get an email to you. I'm still looking at you
Okay.
like you can see me right now, but
Yeah,
Well,
very good.
Since we're on the topic of communication, I have so many other things I would love to say, but I just want to say that my organization, Freedom Forum, that fosters First Amendment freedoms for all Americans, is creating a little video. They interviewed several of the walkers. It's going to be like a 3-minute video that uplifts people who are exercising their First Amendment freedoms, and so that'll be another vehicle for us to share this. But nice job on the video. That was awesome.
And it's just like a super quick anecdote about Allison, who we walk with. I was gonna Matthew, your question about how to respond to the actual challenge of the walk. The first thing that came to mind was the thing that Allison said in conversation when we were walking through Staten Island, which is that what we were doing in this action was something which was registering on a physical level as being productive. Like the thing that we were doing wasn't just sitting and worrying and scrolling and reading and yada, yada, yada. We were doing things which, were physically strenuous, but we're registering on a physical, biological level as being progressive, like we were progressing towards something better. And I think there's an incredible amount of empowerment that comes from doing the thing that we have all evolved to do over the past billion years, which is just walk towards something that we need in life, progress towards something that we need in life, losing our body. So I think there's still a lot of really effective and generative activism that can come from just the simple act of walking as a group with a unified intention, as a form of prayer over time. There's certainly a lot of action here that is yet to be plumbed, at least by this group, and that's part of the work that I personally intend to do in the future.
And it's telling that Matthew's anecdote about my dark night of the soul happened after I had skipped 4 miles to do laptop work and looked at the Instagram comments. Never read the comments. The comments were mostly good. I think on that wonderful note from Michael, let's have our outro and do a little silence together.